Hello, UDC. My name is Alec Zebrick, and I'm the Asia Pacific Manager at Chainalysis, Investigations and Special Programs, not research. It's a pleasure to be here today, presenting to all of you today. So first, a little bit about myself. I worked in US law enforcement for 5 years as a detective, where I was a post-certified lead homicide investigator for the state of Louisiana. Concurrently, I worked at the United States Secret Service Task Force, at the New Orleans Field Office, at the Financial and Cybercrime Task Force. Now, while I was in law enforcement, I specialized in data forensics, utilized for solving major case crimes and mapping the historical location of suspects. Now, I left law enforcement a little over 4 years ago and made the transition into private sector tech. And I've been living in Korea ever since. So prior to joining Chainalysis, I worked as a cloud infrastructure and cybersecurity engineer at Hyundai Motor Group 42 in Seoul, and I do speak Korean. So today's presentation is going to be split up into 4 different sections. First, I'm going to talk about Chainalysis, a little bit about our history and what we do. Then, I'll share some of the global trends we see in crypto and share some data specific to Korea. Third, we'll talk about some of the challenges we face with anti-money laundering and the importance of transaction monitoring. And finally, I'll share a recent Chainalysis case study from here in Asia on how we were able to track the movement of funds through a crime that initiated off-chain. So who is Chainalysis, and what do we do? Blockchain is changing the way people interact, and it's empowering a growing ecosystem. It's exciting and opening up so many new possibilities. Here at Chainalysis, like many others, we believe that eventually all value will move to the blockchain. Chainalysis is a crypto data analytics company that's been connecting the ecosystem since 2014. We have over 1,000 customers across 75 countries, where we sit at the center of law enforcement and regulators, cryptocurrency businesses, and financial institutions. What we offer to our customers is our crypto data lake, proprietary labeling, and access to an enormous customer network that's collaborating on our platform. We partner with financial crime fighters in their efforts to combat human trafficking, child exploitation, and other forms of crime. And we provide transaction monitoring to cryptocurrency businesses so they can better protect their organization and clients, as well as ensure regulatory compliance. Ultimately, we are at the center, enabling our partners to maximize their ability interacting with blockchain technology. And since we've been around since the beginning, mapping blockchain analytics, we have been the trust partner in the world's largest cases. For example, we help recover funds in the Axie Infinity hack that has now been attributed to DPRK. We work with law enforcement and justice departments in their takedowns of darknet markets and child exploitation, such as the case of Welcome to Video, which at the time was the world's largest child exploitation site in the world, hosted here in South Korea. And we work with the world's top exchanges, providing over 300 million users worldwide safer access to finance. We're proud of our partnerships across the industry in building trust in blockchain. So let's look at some of the global crypto trends, and also here in Korea. With $27.8 billion US total year over year identified as stolen funds, ransomware, terrorist financing, and other forms of crime, we can certainly say that illicit activity does occur on the blockchain. Now, we know that this kind of activity only makes up a small portion of transactions. And in fact, from September of last year to August of this year, in East Asia, that number was only 0.44%, or $2.9 billion US dollars. Now, comparatively, that may seem low, but in an inherently global sector, such as crypto, our collective defenses are only as strong as our weakest link. That is exactly why the FATF recently released a roadmap for strengthening the implementation of what is called Recommendation 15 across its membership. Now, in this regulatory environment, South Korea is already an early mover, having established frameworks for AML and CFT for virtual asset service providers that has been in effect since 2021. And Korea is leading the pack with the highest economic activity in East Asia at $98 billion US dollars total year over year. And of this activity, centralized exchanges make up the largest category at 69.8%. Now we know that centralized exchanges are the largest recipients of illicit funds. However, the world of crypto money laundering is relatively small and highly concentrated. For example, last year, just 4 deposit addresses had a combined $1.1 billion US dollars received from illicit funds, and just 21 deposit addresses received 50% of all funds sent from ransomware to fiat off-ramps. And in Korea, the threat remains high at $943 million US dollars of illicit funds received. And if we look at the share of illicit activity by crime type, we see that sanctions are the largest category at $632 million, followed by scams and stolen funds at $276 million, dwarfing the other categories. Now, on a global level, we need to continue to press forward with AML and CFT standards, as well as continue to build expertise within compliance teams on how to detect and address illicit activity. Now, the good news is that the transparency of the blockchain provides us with new tools on how to do this. And on a public ledger, with every transaction being recorded, it means that law enforcement always has a trail to follow, even years after the fact. So let's talk a little bit more about that public ledger and how it can be utilized for anti-money laundering and transaction monitoring. Since Chainalysis works with customers all around the world, we understand the challenges they face. And resolving those challenges involves going from blockchain data to taking action. The problem, however, is what we call the great crypto paradox. That is, the answer to all of our questions are right there on the public ledger. Questions like, what exchange is downstream of an address or transaction? Or what is the risk of an address? These are all questions that can be answered with information that is publicly available. But the paradox of it is although anyone can access it, one just can't easily read it. And we've identified 4 key areas preventing one from gathering the necessary blockchain data insights to taking action. First is understanding the landscape. This is about understanding what is blockchain, having that foundational knowledge to interact effectively in crypto. Second is interpreting the data. This is about bringing meaning to the blockchain, being able to identify an address or understand its exposure or risk. Then it's resolving the situation. This is about having the right lens to look at that interpreted data to map and screen to suit your needs. And finally, it's about scaling the results. How do you do this with more complex investigations or across hundreds of thousands of transactions? How do you operate effectively in crypto when it's not human readable? Blockchain is a complex data set, but by itself, it's just a collection of letters and numbers timestamps, and values. It's hard to understand what's going on here. And without a way to translate this data, trying to understand it can directly impede the actions you want to take. It's difficult to answer these questions, like what was the path of the crypto? Interpreting the data is at the core of blockchain readiness. Without it, this might as well be anonymous, useless data. That is why, at Chainalysis, we've built the blockchain knowledge graph. Powered by machine learning, using deterministic, proven algorithms, and dedicated forensic experts, we've built and continue to curate the world's most trusted knowledge graph. Now, what is a knowledge graph, and why is it important? Well, it's more than just data. It contains relationships, insights, and evolves with activity both on and off-chain. And Chainalysis gets its data from a variety of sources, from social media, websites and forums, darknet sources, and so much more. Chainalysis is mapping and complementing crypto data just as search engines did for Web 2. What do I mean by this? Well, let's take Google, for example. If you look up a restaurant in Google, you get more than just the address and the phone number. Google is so much more than just a phone book. You get reviews, the menu, maybe even site traffic. This is exactly what Chainalysis is doing with blockchain data. And we've been doing it longer than anyone else in the industry, with over $23 trillion worth of transactions identified and over 1 billion addresses mapped to real-world entities. And we have a team of over 100 plus dedicated researchers and data scientists attributing and curating blockchain data. But it turns out that making these identifications of who's who on the blockchain is a pretty difficult challenge. Blockchains are public, offering a permanent digital record, but with limitations. Take this transaction, for example. We see here a collection of addresses on the left, sending about 1.5 Bitcoin to one of the addresses on the right. Now, the blockchain gives us this information, but it doesn't tell us who these addresses belong to. At Chainalysis, we run advanced algorithms applied to the extensive data that we've collected over the years to make this information usable. At Chainalysis, the addresses on the left become Coinify, a Bitcoin payment processing company. And the address on the top right, receiving the majority from this transaction, becomes Bitstamp, a cryptocurrency exchange. Now, we know that a wallet can have multiple addresses, and in fact, services can have thousands to tens of millions of addresses. But when you see an address through the Chainalysis knowledge graph, so much more rich data is there. You can identify it, see its counterparties, its exposure, category. So much more is revealed by capturing these relationships in a knowledge graph. So what is KYT? Well, it stands for Know Your Transaction, and it's a process for mapping and screening transactions to detect and prevent illicit activity. Now, Chainalysis KYT is powered by the industry's best data, adding over 100 new services every week. This includes illicit services, such as darknet markets, and legitimate services, such as cryptocurrency exchanges. KYT monitors transactions on your platform and assesses risk from the counterparty's category and transacted amount on each transfer. This gives you automated, real-time alerting, allowing you to take action, such as freezing a customer deposit associated with scams or ransomware. Here, we see an exchange that through KYT is able to monitor both incoming and outgoing transactions. In this example, they receive about $200 worth of crypto from ransomware. Now, since it's indirect, they might assess a medium risk profile. Having this ability to monitor transactions is an important step towards regulatory compliance. That's a laser. Oh, there we go. And finally, I'll go over a recent Chainalysis case study from here in Asia, where we track crypto money laundering for off-chain crime. Cybercriminals are often attracted to crypto due to its near-instant, pseudo-anonymous, and cross-border capabilities. Last year, Chainalysis tracked $23.8 billion worth of crypto laundered by cybercriminals. However, these figures only include crimes that are inherently related to crypto, such as hacks on exchanges, ransomware, or crypto scams. For the most part, it does not include crimes that initiated off-chain. However, we know that this kind of activity occurs, and investigators can use our tools to trace the flow of those funds. In addition, when customers provide us with addresses and transactions associated with this activity, we can label it and track it just like we would any other case. Now, that's exactly what happened recently in Japan, where a major cryptocurrency exchange that uses Chainalysis was alerted by police that one of its users had deposited fiat currency derived from fraudulent activity into its exchange, converted it to crypto in order to launder it. Now, we don't know the exact nature of this fraudulent activity, but it's possible it may have been a financial scam, as that's a huge problem in Japan recently. In this case, the cybercriminal moved the crypto from the exchange through a series of personal wallets and deposited it into a different exchange, converted it back to fiat cash that could appear to be legitimate. Now, we see this activity here on this Chainalysis reactor graph. In the top left corner of the graph, we see funds moving from the reporting exchange to a group of personal wallets, reminiscent of both the placement and layering stages of money laundering. Now, these initial transactions from that top left exchange were the ones provided to us by the customer. Chainalysis had already identified some of these wallets as being associated with scams, allowing us to identify and alert other Japan-based exchanges who had users that sent funds to these wallets. The funds were then reconsolidated to a single personal wallet. We know from previous cases that this pattern of diffusing funds across many wallets and reconsolidating them into a single wallet is a common money laundering tactic. From there, the funds were once again sent and spread across an even larger number of personal wallets. In cases like this, where we see multiple stages of layering and more advanced obfuscation techniques used, it really exemplifies the importance of having smart transaction monitoring. Finally, the funds were reconsolidated again at a single deposit address at a mainstream exchange, likely to be cashed out in what's known as the integration stage of money laundering. Now, cybercriminals using fraudulent accounts at exchange to launder money or commit crimes is nothing new. And that's exactly why recently in Japan, a major online bank introduced new restrictions to try and prevent this kind of activity. Now, users are unable to send yen directly to a cryptocurrency exchange until 1 month after opening a new account. Additionally, the Japan Cybercrime Control Center, or JC3, recently published guidelines for financial institutions and law enforcement on how to detect and mitigate this kind of online crime. Now, here in Korea and globally, we must remain vigilant and monitor the evolving trends of cybercriminals so that we can continue to provide safer access to finance for all. That'll conclude my presentation today. It was an honor to be invited to present here at this amazing conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zebrick. Thank you very much for an insightful presentation. I believe we're getting some questions online, and we have already some questions that were submitted beforehand. So I'd like to pick a question that was provided online in real time. So here's the first question for you. This is a simple question. So what kind of algorithm do you use for the encryption?
For the what?
For encryption.
For encryption?
It was a simple and very short question.
Yeah, I'm not sure what we're using for like what we're encrypting that would require that. So we do like blockchain analytics, so we're usually looking at other blockchains that are doing it, yeah.
Okay, then for the person that actually asked the question, if you would like a follow-up, please provide a little bit more detail on the question. Here's another question. So internationally, what kind of challenges did you face while operating the AML system, while meeting the current regulations and legislations of each country? And what efforts are being made at the moment from Chainalysis to bridge the gap between technology and regulations?
Yeah, so the regulatory environment's evolving worldwide. I work mostly focused on Asia and the Pacific region, but depending if you're in Europe, South America, North America, it's different. And so, as I mentioned in my presentation, our collective defenses are only as strong as our weakest link. And so even if you're in an area that has very strong regulation, very strong security, if funds are able to be laundered easily through one of those weakest links with laxer security, then it can kind of hurt the whole system. So that's one of the largest challenges I think that we face is having this global response. And I think collaboration is probably one of the most important things to solve that. As far as bridging the gap between technology and AML, well, I think as technology continues to advance and we see breakthroughs in AI, we also have to keep monitor how that changes trends with cybercrime. And I think companies like us and others in the room, we have to also use that technology to keep up with the changes. Yeah.
Thank you for that answer. I think that we have a couple of minutes for this question, and of course, I will turn over to the floor. So, other than the regulations as well as legislations, what efforts are needed to create a safe crypto environment, and what kind of influence do you think the AML technology will have on finance and other industries?
Yeah, so it's not always just about regulation, of course, right? So I think having security is important. I think for anyone in the crypto industry, a lot of the security incidents that we see, they're not necessarily inherently related to crypto. It's phishing attacks. People are falling victims to other forms of scams and crimes that can happen anywhere. So shoring up your cybersecurity and your defenses is an important aspect of that, not just related to crypto.
Thank you very much. So widen the scope a little bit. And now I think we have a little bit of time to open up for more questions. Anyone from the floor who has questions, please feel free to ask away. Don't be afraid or embarrassed. Yes. Yes, we have from our table B. Can we get him a microphone, please? Yes, we're right behind you.
How's it going?
Good.
So, I know you don't work in traditional finance, but has there been or will there be a case study against illicit transactions that happen in traditional finance against blockchain?
I think that's a really good question. I think we see a lot of similarities in a lot of ways with illicit activity. I mentioned earlier that cyber criminals tend to be drawn to crypto in particular because of its cross-border, near instant, and pseudo-anonymity. With traditional finance, it's cross-border, but I think crypto offers them some new tools to use. So I guess we'll see how they both adapt and evolve in the future, yeah.